You brought up Biden and the Democrats. So before we spend a little time on the Republican side, why, if Joe Biden isn't on the ballot there, and Dean Phillips, the Minnesota congressman, is, why do you think he only gets 20%? And I say that because the Biden campaign isn't on the ballot, but it seems like, at least from what I'm hearing, they're really making a concerted effort for this write-in campaign. Is it that robust from what you can see?
It is. I mean, they've had an organization set up now for a few months. They've put some money behind it, not a ton, but some. But they have every Democrat elected official in the state is pushing folks to write in Biden. Jean Shaheen did a picture the other day of her going to the Madbury clerk's office and saying she was voting by absentee for Joe Biden because she'd be out of town. And so, you do have that effort from the Democratic Party and the Democratic establishment here, which, frustrates the hell out of Republicans like us, of course, because we're saying this is the guy who's trying to kill the New Hampshire primary.
Right. It's like we're rewarding him for screwing us. When you mention how much money Dean Phillips put in, that's a lot of money in New Hampshire's economy that he just screwed them for. And so now they're turning around and saying, okay, but we'll still help you.
It's just fascinating to me. And I think I thought what was really telling is you had a Democratic state senator post the other day saying, we must all write in Biden in solidarity. And he posted a graphic, which was the communist fist. It was literally the old Soviet fist poster. And
hello, comrades.
This just shows the collectivism mindset they've got going into this primary, where they say, he's screwing us, but we all have to fall in line. It's the most incredible thing.
So let's kind of flip over for a second, because that's happening, because there's really not a Democratic race. How concerned are you, or should the Trump campaign potentially be, that Democrats are going to try to play in the Republican primary?
So registered Democrats, if you are a registered Democrat, you can only vote in the Democratic primary. What you can do, though, if you are an unaffiliated voter, so an independent, so you don't choose to register with Republican or Democrat, you could vote in either primary. You can vote in both. You could vote in either, though. And just you change your registration when you walk in, and then you can change it back to independent on the way out. You're going to see very high unaffiliated voter participation in the Republican primary, in part because there's no real race on the Democratic side. There are going to be some folks who choose to go right in Biden. There will be some who choose to vote for Dean Phillips. But the vast majority of unaffiliated voters are going to vote in the Republican primary, which is changing the makeup of it. I mean, most polling right now shows that it's about 47% of the overall makeup might be unaffiliated, which would be a record. I mean, I think the highest we've seen before is maybe 40%, give or take. I think that speaks to a couple things. I mean, the natural inclination of observers to say, well, that's just going to help Haley. And yes, she is going to win at least a plurality, likely a majority of unaffiliated voters. Donald Trump still has a sizable level of support from unaffiliated voters, though. These are folks who are disenfranchised from the political system. Maybe they think both parties are too establishment. And so it's telling, I kind of look at it as a simple math equation going into tomorrow. If 53% of the electorate's Republican and 47% is unaffiliated, then whoever you either have to get, if Nikki Haley in this case, you have to either get significantly more unaffiliated voters to show up, or you've got to improve your standing with Republicans. Otherwise, the equation doesn't work. Most polling, if you look at the CNN UNH poll that came out yesterday, Donald Trump's getting somewhere upwards of 68% or so of Republicans. Nikki Haley's getting somewhere around 57% of unaffiliated voters. So she's getting 57% of the 47% of the electorate, but he's getting 68% of the 53% of the electorate. Right. Just do the math.
I mean, if you're Nikki Haley, this seems like the one time that you have a chance to do well, because you start going to more and more closed primaries. So tomorrow night, as far as I'm concerned, if she doesn't actually keep this within, and I think at most 10 points, I don't see how she makes the case to move forward. Do you agree?
Yeah, it's going to be tough, right? Because the circumstances here are such that it is set up to go for a non-Trump candidate, right? Between unaffiliates being able to vote, a more moderate Republican as well, right? I mean, not just unaffiliated voters, but if you actually break down the Republican Party in New Hampshire, you have an outsized role of moderate Republicans compared to a lot of other electorates. More Republicans identify as pro-choice than many other states. A lot of libertarian-leaning voters who have a different mindset on all of this. And so, and not to mention the fact that you've got Chris Sununu, who, current sitting governor, popular last name, family dynasty, who has remarkably strong approval ratings, especially with unaffiliated voters, who is all in for Nikki Haley, like all in. I mean, at this point, he is like the campaign manager and the running mate, going to all these events. And so, it is the perfect, storm for someone who's a non-Trump candidate. You got to capitalize here. Now, I will say this, if she capitalizes here, right? I mean, I think New Hampshire has the tendency to surprise. Polling often can't pick up those last minute movements and surges sometimes. And so let's say she does surprise. I do believe you could replicate some aspects of what happened in New Hampshire and other states. Michigan will vote before Super Tuesday, similar type of voting pattern. Even South Carolina, remember, a lot of the southern states, you don't register by parties. So inherently they're open primaries. You may be able to replicate some aspects of New Hampshire. But again, it's got to happen here. If it doesn't happen here, it's going to be really tough to do anywhere else.
So you mentioned, we've got a big X factor with these independents, unaffiliated voters that can go anywhere. The polling seems fairly consistent, right? Donald Trump somewhere around 55, Nikki Haley somewhere between 38 and 40. From what you see on the ground in the people that you talk to, do you think that's a realistic thing, or do you think that we really will get some kind of surprise?
I think it might be a little closer than what the polling shows. Not, unlikely to be a lot closer. I mean, I think the good pollsters, I'd say, and I won't name names, but there's two jobs in the world, actually maybe three jobs in the world where you can be wrong every day and still keep your job. It's the weatherman and a pollster, and probably a pundit as well. And so, but the good pollsters are really trying hard to make sure they are getting a true reflection of the electorate. And I think when we look at the makeup of their sample, talking about 47% unaffiliated voters, it shows they're doing that. And so I think, look, we could see a surprise. Maybe there's a surge of turnout, seismic surge of turnout of unaffiliated voters. But if some of my conversations are playing out in larger scale, where these kind of reluctant Trump voters are saying, let's go with him now, he's going to be the nominee, it's possible he does trickle up into those mid 50s. I still think he probably finishes up in the low 50s. But, like I said, a lot of folks, the incredible thing, Sean, you would think with the tens of millions of dollars that's being spent, the hundreds of candidate visits, the immense amount of media, that everyone would have their mind made up a day before the primary. Right. You would be shocked at the number of people who are still figuring this out. I mean, I talked to a guy the other day. He is a former elected official, the son of a former elected official, and an independent voter. And he is still today not sure if he's going to pull a ballot for Nikki Haley in the Republican primary or go vote for Dean Phillips to send a message to Joe Biden.
People like that blow me away. I'm like, how do you not know 24 hours out? I mean, and by the way, saying I'm still going to go vote. I mean, I don't know. I feel like that's when I go to like Costco and I just start putting stuff in the basket that I had no intention of buying.
That's right.
Right.
So in this case, you can't buy both, right? Like when you're at Costco, you're like, yeah, sure, I'll get the waffles, the frozen waffles and the frozen pancakes. But, tomorrow you got to pick one.